Anybody else like that music? I liked it at first. It's growing on me even more. What's happening, everybody? Welcome. Today is Tuesday. It's July 19th, 2022. My name is Jeremy, and this is my first. That was good. I managed to set an alarm. I woke up ahead of my alarm thanks to the birds. Good morning, Jenny. It's going to be a nice day. We had a ton of rain yesterday, so I'm expecting the plants over the next few days to just go insane. We needed rain. The rivers are really low, and I'm just happy to be alive. Good morning, Gad. Gad says the music equals fist. I'm assuming that's a positive assessment. Shout out and thank you to Josh Blum of the 13th Hour podcast and many other creative endeavors for that music. He did a great job. How was your Monday? It was Monday, right? Yeah, today's Tuesday, so yesterday was Monday. How was your Monday? Did you check out that episode of Martial Arts Radio with Marina Lima? If you did, you know it was a great episode. You know that one tugged at some heartstrings a bit at times, and well, if you heard what I heard, you were rooting for her as she was telling her story, and that was something that I really liked. I like when I like people. I want to think positively of people. I want to cheer them on, and that was something I was able to do in that episode. Good morning, John. And Gad says, yes, couldn't find the thumbs up that fast. Jenny says, Josh Blum is an awesome fella. Yes, he is. He's a good friend of the show. Appreciate him. Coffee came out pretty good this morning. I'm happy about that. So I want to know about your Monday. I want to know what you did, what you didn't do, how you did it, who you did it with, why you did it, where, when Monday. Tell me all about your Monday. Drop it in the chat. I had a pretty straightforward day. Some meetings, good stuff all around, got some work done, and then got to about, I had one meeting canceled for today because the host didn't have internet because she lives in Costa Rica, and sometimes her internet does not work well. Pardon me as I get gunk out of my eye. It's a morning show. It's raw. This is not filtered. So that's rescheduled for today. But got to the end of the day and I was like, I have stuff I need to do. I don't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. And I said, okay, Jeremy, you have to do these things. If you don't do these things, you're really setting yourself back. Just get in the car and drive to Panera. And I did. And it took a lot of energy to get there. And once I did, and I got a bagel, I sat down, which, by the way, they sliced the bagel, regular size bagel, and there was like 10% of it was one part, and the other 90 was the other. It was not a properly sliced bagel. But anyway, I managed to get the work done. In fact, I got more done than I needed to because I was so efficient. And this is the biggest challenge with working from home. And if any of you out there have worked from home for a while, and I don't mean, I started a year ago. I mean, a while. I've been working from home for 2 decades. It can be really tough for your space to be your home and your workplace. And getting out of your workplace to go to another place to do work sometimes is what you got to do. That's what I needed to do yesterday. Good morning, Mark. Jenny said, my day was great. Played with sidewalk chalk and made signs for our tour event this weekend. Lots of creative outlet for me. It felt like I was playing all day. I needed that. Oh, that's awesome. Hey, Daniel. I spent Monday working and boiling in stupid heat. Hence today off. It's too hot to work. Wow. For those of you who may not remember or new to the show, Daniel's in the UK and they are dealing with some extreme heat. If I remember correctly, this is record-setting heat that they're experiencing right now. Gad says, didn't do much except for work. Yesterday it was 35°C, 95 degrees. And today it's going to be 102. Not my favorite weather at all. Prone to heat strokes, unfortunately. Well, I think when it's 100 degrees, we're all prone to heat strokes, aren't we? Good morning. Brian says Facebook wasn't showing the live video notification. I'm not aware of having done anything differently, so we'll just blame Facebook. You can keep telling me what you did yesterday, and I'm going to tell you what's going on today. So today, got a few things going on. The electrician's coming by to do some more outside lights and do some other things. I will tell you, when we think about defense, when we think about being safe in our home, and we think about external deterrence to people, you know, let's call a spade when we're thinking about people breaking into your house. The number one and two things you can do, in my opinion, visible security cameras. And I recommend the ones from Google, the Nest cameras. Not so much the current generation. The previous generation's a little bit better in some respects, but honestly, for most people, they probably prefer the current ones. And they are constantly running deals. And if you qualify, they give you 2 years, no interest financing. So there's a plus there. If you want to go the inexpensive route, the Wyze cameras, WYZE, are good. They're not as good as the Google cameras, but they get the job done. And they've got a variety of different ones, and they're like 15% of the price. Having a number of those up so people can see is great. Why are those cameras great? Because they're constantly uploading to the cloud. So even if someone comes and rips the camera off, it doesn't change anything. Number two, motion lights. And today the electrician's coming. I have 1, 2, 3 motion lights, and I'm looking to add one. Oh no, we have 4. There's 4 there. I'm going to add at least 2, probably 4 more. Because they're really handy, and it helps keep some of the critters at bay. And why not? The wiring's already there. He's going to tack into that wiring and put up a fixture. And not a big deal. There's some other stuff I'm going to have him do. All right. So Daniel says they're going to see 40 degrees Celsius today. The UK record is 37.7. So they're blowing the doors off that. That's nuts. And we don't have aircon, really. Air conditioning, for those of you not in Europe. You know, Daniel and Gad, have you guys been in the chat at the same time before? I don't know. I don't remember the two of you being here. And what's fun to me is I was so before the show happened. Yeah, because we're all part of this. Before we do the show, I often will kind of pump myself up or whatever, just because remember, I haven't had coffee yet. I got to do something to be awake. And one of the things I was reminding myself this morning, hey, you have a show that is watched by people and participated in by people worldwide. And here we have 2 people. Yeah, and this is the first time that they've both been in the chat at the same time. So I think that's super fun. And I'm really thankful for it. This idea that what we are doing at Whistlecake is spreading. I got a question for you guys. I reached out to Andrew yesterday and I said, here's an episode that I want to do And I'm not going to tell you what it's about. It is, I will say, debunking a myth that is often thrown around to justify an arbitrary standard within the martial arts. And I get really worked up on the subject. Now, if you look at the body of martial arts radio episodes, you have never heard me swear. You've never heard me swear on this show that I'm aware of. But if you know me personally, I do use colorful language in my day-to-day life. And this goes back to a long ago belief that I didn't want people to not consume our content if they didn't, if they felt there are people out there for whom they really do not appreciate colorful language. And we also were producing things that might be, if we forget about the quality of language, appropriate for younger audiences. And I wanted to make sure as many people could participate and enjoy what we made as possible. But when I look at this subject and how worked up I get about it, it makes me wonder, am I being inauthentic if we record this episode and I don't swear? So I'm curious of all of you, if you tuned into a martial arts radio episode that was labeled explicit and we mentioned at the top of the episode, hey, Jeremy's probably going to get a little heated on this one. How would you feel about that? Would it make you less likely to continue listening? More likely? I don't know. And I'm really curious. You all know me well, and I appreciate your honesty. So I'm curious. And if it's not something you're willing to share in the chat, if you can write to me, email me, Facebook me, whatever, later, I would appreciate it. So last night, Brian went to Tommy's special class with Sifu Watson last night. Learned the very basics of push hands, then hung out at Tommy's after. So you know what I love about this? Here's something that happened. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. I don't think this would have happened without First Cup. Brian and Tommy got to know each other because of First Cup. I know Brian through a few different ways, but I know Brian has not been training actively for a little while. And I'm super excited to hear that he made the drive and did some training. That, like, I love that. What are the 3 pillars of Whistle Kick? Connect, educate, and entertain. Connect. And Gad says, Whistle Kick European chapter, represent. And Daniel, in response to my comment about swearing, I think it works well as a 1 in 700 plus episode thing. Okay, that's fair. And Jenny says, I'd be fine with that because you don't do it regularly. It's not like it changes my opinion or the dynamic of the show. And the warning would allow folks to listen before sharing the episode with younger martial artists. Okay. I don't, and I've been thinking about this a lot. There are a few subjects that have come up that I feel really strongly about. And I wonder how much I'm being inauthentic by strongly censoring my language. Now, hopefully, I am articulate enough that I'm not stumbling for words because I'm trying to pull a few of them out. I mean, really, we're talking about a dozen words. Maybe not even that many. But this is something that's come to mind a few times. And what brought it to mind recently, a few months ago, a podcast that I've listened to for a very long time, probably the first podcast I listened to. This podcast goes back to 2008, maybe 2008. And I think I started listening in 2009. It has nothing to do with martial arts, but this is someone who has gone through phases of self-censoring and not, and most recently he talked about it. He's like, look, I swear in my personal life. I feel like I'm being inauthentic if I'm not swearing on the show. And it's not like he's doing it excessively or trying to do it for shock value. But it's opened up the question for me, and so I appreciate answers. Gad says, personally, I'd listen anyway. Don't mind colorful language. It happens when you're feeling emotional or heated about something. Yeah. This is one that I even took some notes last night. I was sitting down. I was like, all right, this and this. Because I want to make sure I get it right. I sent it off to Andrew, and I was like, here's the problem. And here's what we need to talk about. And it's something that pisses me off. Anyway. Yesterday, I asked you in Facebook what is the purpose of a martial arts test? And I've got a few answers in there, and I'd like for the rest of you to think about your answer. What is the purpose of a martial arts test? And I will read the comments that are there, and you can post some stuff. Oh, burping. And you can post some stuff in the chat, and I will share it. What's going on today? So the electrician, meeting with Justin. We're probably going to talk mostly about Free Training Day South in Atlanta coming up in October. I'm gonna have to book flights soon. Daniel says, I've just checked. Actually, Whistlekick is the only podcast on my app that isn't marked with an E, but I understand and agree with why it isn't. I think a lot of feeds mark that so they have the room to do so. We try. It's rare that I think we've only had 2 episodes that we marked as explicit. One was Tony Blauer, and the other was much more recent. And the one that was much more recent, I was looking at what we needed to cut out, and I said, it changes the tone. It changes what this person was saying. Expletives don't usually do that, but in this case it did. And I didn't want to do that. And the reason we didn't for Tony Blauer, actually we did 2 versions. There's an explicit and an edited. And the edited one took forever. And this was back when I was doing editing. What else am I doing? Make up for yesterday's meeting, the client. I came to a realization yesterday, in part. I don't think he's going to listen to this or watch this, rather, but had a discussion with Craig, who's on the show sometimes, very rarely, but Craig Wareham, who does a bunch of stuff with Whistlekick. We're working on some cool projects right now. But just this realization that Whistlekick is what I'm supposed to be doing, and helping people and helping schools is what I'm supposed to be doing. And while I have a variety of clients on the consulting side that I really like working with, I'm done going after anybody. I'm done trying to recruit new clients unless they're martial arts schools. When I look at what I'm able to do for a martial arts school versus what I'm able to do for somebody else, I do really well for martial arts schools. And selfishly, in doing that, it supports Whistlekick. It's rare in the world where you can do something where everybody involved wins. When I help a martial arts school grow, everybody wins. I make some money. The school makes some more money. The students benefit from the school. They all learn a bit more about me, by extension, Whistlekick. They tend to resonate with what we do at Whistlekick because most people tend to resonate with what we do at Whistlekick because it's good. And some of those people come to our events and buy our stuff. There's no downside there. So yeah, so I might actually be changing the messaging on my consulting website and everything. I don't know. I may or may not put that time in. Who knows? So let's talk about tests. Because Daniel says something that sadly is true in a lot of places. The purpose of a martial arts test, I've trained at places over the years where it's a good way for the instructor to take some more money from people. Needless to say, I didn't train there long. And I wish I could say that it was rare for that to be the case. I won't say it's common, but I'm not going to say it's rare because it's not rare because I've trained at those schools. Okay, so now that you've been training for this long and you know this stuff, you're going to test for this belt. I trained at a school where I had to buy a new patch every time I promoted because the trim on the patch had to match the color of your belt. Yeah, so there I am in my dorm room sewing on a patch. Yeah. What do the rest of you think about martial arts tests? Jenny says, just from Matt, rather, to see how someone performs under pressure if they obtained the mental attributes along with the physical. I think that's a great answer. There are a few places within our martial arts training where we really get to experience pressure that might be similar to the pressure we experience in a real world situation. Anything out of the ordinary where we are feeling that there are stakes, there are consequences. Testing is a great one. Competition is another. I think it's the best value of competition is to get out there and feel that pressure. And when I think about all the things that have happened in my life that don't make me panic and freeze up, it's starting competition at an early age and continuing competition through my teens. And then, once in a while, I've competed twice as an adult. Yeah, 2006, 2016. It's been 6 years. Maybe I'll compete again. Who knows? But to feel that pressure, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful element to bring in. I don't think it's the purpose, at least not to me. Eric says to determine a level of proficiency and to demonstrate your knowledge and skills. I think that's the heart of it. I might be making a small adjustment to the language, but I was brought up being told you are invited to test for your next rank. This was a school that didn't do testing in a particular cadence, no, like every 6 months or anything like that. You were invited to test when we, the instructors, know that you are ready for your next rank. You pass when you know you are ready. And if you're thinking about early ranks, that might be a little bit difficult to understand if you've only been training a short while. But if you've been training a while, if you've been a black belt for a little bit, especially if you've sat on testing boards for other people's black belt tests, and you look at that, I suspect you agree with me. Mark says, I totally agree with that. I'm not sure which one you agree with. That's the challenge with this show is that the delay. I don't always know what you guys are referencing. But I'm glad you agree, Mark. I get to see Mark and his students in less than 2 weeks. I'm excited for that. Jenny says, I wouldn't be testing if I hadn't already demonstrated the mental and physical requirements for advancement. So for me, testing is not about proving you know your material. It's about your ability to face a challenge and push through, go beyond your limits, and grow as a martial artist. It's the personal development that comes from the experience. Corollary. There's a nerdy word. I love the word corollary. For me, testing alone is not as rewarding as testing with others. I personally thrive on encouraging others through my example to push harder than they believe they can. That's super cool. I've tested. I've only had one significant test solo, and it was so much harder. Testing as a group, so much easier. So much easier. Because you dilute out the attention. Even if you're only testing with one other person, there's half the attention on you. Now, I suppose if I was testing with a person or a number of people who were far better prepared and far better conditioned than I may not like it as much, but I've never allowed that to be the case. I've always made sure I was at least in the middle of the pack, which, you know what, frankly, is if you want to, I don't want to say skate by, but if you want the easiest path through testing, it's being in the middle. It's not being at the top. Bell curve. There's another nerdy concept for you. Jenny says testing is on a regular schedule in our association too, but you are invited to test. If the monthly, quarterly, or semi-annual test based on belt level is coming up, but you aren't ready, you aren't invited to test. That's how I understand it used to be at the Taekwondo school. I trained. I can't claim that I trained there. I am not active in that school, which kind of bums me out, but that's okay. When did I go? A week ago Wednesday? 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. It wasn't that long ago, but it was a good time. I don't think there's a wrong or a right way. I don't think that you can look at this and say, this testing is wrong, this one is right, these reasons are wrong or right. They just have to be consistent and they have to be communicated clearly. I don't mind if people are expected to test every period of time, so long as they only pass if they meet the standards, whatever those standards are. People get bent out of shape. You know, they're claiming this person is a black belt. Well, why is your black belt the standard? Why is this group of people over here the standard? There is no standard. There is an expectation that it demonstrates something of significance. But what if a school opened tomorrow and they made black belt the first rank? Would that dilute the value of somebody else's black belt? No, of course not. It's a symbol. And symbols are as valuable as what you put into them and what you see in them. It's just a symbol. And I'm not going to take specific examples from culture right now, but there are plenty of other things that are symbols that people get really worked up about that mean different things to different people. And if a symbol means something to you that it does not mean to somebody else, you cannot fault them, or at least should not fault them, for seeing it differently than you, just as they should not fault you for seeing it differently than they do. Right? Mark says, go Craig. All right. I appreciate you all sharing. These are the things that I think about all the time. You know, lately, I don't know why. Well, I have some ideas why. The content that I have up on TikTok's been going through a bit of a resurgence. A number of people have found it. People have been duetting my content. This is the stuff I've been saying for a while. This is the stuff I will continue to say. But it's nice to know that in different places, there are at least some people who see what I'm saying, and I'm not alone. I don't pretend to be the only person saying this stuff. I don't believe for a moment that people should just listen to me and parrot it to others. My hope, as always, is that you hear what I say, you consider it, you think about it deeply, if it warrants deep thought, and that you still come to your own opinions, conclusions, etc. Because that's what should happen. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and the host was talking about the importance of considering alternate perspectives on a subject. And in fact, was getting fairly deep in the expression of intelligence that requires. The ability for one to consider what somebody else thinks on a subject, an alternate view, and really come to understand it so strongly that you could even debate against yourself and win with this alternate perspective. And the mental gymnastics, that was one of the phrases he used, that are required to do so. There's a lot of value there. So I hope if I'm ever talking about something and you hear it, you're like, "Oh, Jeremy, I don't agree." Well, two things. One, I hope you'll listen open-mindedly and consider, okay, why don't I agree with what he's saying? And spend some time on it. And if the outcome of thinking about it is that you remain feeling exactly the same, that's okay. And hopefully you will let me know why you think differently than I do. Because the major downside to all of this content that we do is I don't get nearly as much opportunity to hear from you all as you do hearing from me. Yeah. I like talking about this stuff, but I also like hearing about this stuff. So Gad says, I've trained at schools where belts and ranks were given just by how you did in class. No official test, but personally I prefer tests. I need to see that structured progression. Oh, interesting. And Jenny follows up, agreed. The way I perform at the challenging test helps me measure my progression. Gad says, that should be a subject in school from kindergarten on. How to respectfully disagree with people. Used to be. It was when I was a kid. Maybe not a formal subject, but it was something that was there. You know, no, we're not going to go there. All right. I want to thank you for coming by. I want to thank you for your support in all the things that we do here at Whistlekick. If you want to support us, you can grab something at whistlekick.com using the code FirstCup15. You can join the Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. Patreon people, we have a meeting tomorrow night to talk about the Patreon exclusive show. You should have gotten a notification about it. I forget if it was 8 or 8:30. It's here. I'll double check. 8:30. 8:30. There's a Zoom link in Patreon. Everybody who's contributing to Patreon should have access to it. And we're going to talk about the next show and the one that will be just for Patreon. If you want the whole list, if you are in fact part of the Whistlekick family, you can check out the family page, whistlekick.com/family. I updated it yesterday. I generally do on Mondays. Monday's usually the day, but not always. We do this show every weekday, 6:30 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I thank you for coming by. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'm going to see you tomorrow, I hope. Take care. And for those of you dealing with the heat, be well. Stay cool. Don't underestimate the value of putting your feet in a bucket of cold water.